Welcome to Mental Mettle Coaching, where our mission is to help you learn to thrive in the face of adversity, not just survive it. We are passionate about empowering you to live, play, and work with a resilient and spirited mindset. Hi, I'm Matt Thomann. I'm an ICF professional coach and keynote speaker. My background as an athlete, basketball coach, teacher, and school administrator has equipped me with the insights that resonate deeply with the schools, teams, athletes, and coaches I work with. However, it's my personal journey through anxiety, cancer, and an ischemic stroke in 2020 that truly brings authenticity to my presentations. While learning to speak and write again, I also pursued and earned my ICF coaching certification. Now the practices I embrace are more than theoretical concepts. They're a way of life. Developing a positive mindset is within reach for all, but it requires self-awareness and the repetition of intentional activities. At Mental Mettle Coaching, we'll guide you, your staff, and your students on this transformative journey. Together, let's forge your mettle. This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, where we explore how to forge mental toughness and resilience in every aspect of life. Welcome, I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann. I'm an ICF certified professional coach with a background as a teacher, basketball coach, and athletic director. But my journey took a dramatic turn in 2020 when I survived both cancer and a stroke. Those experiences shaped my mission to help others grow stronger in every facet of life. Today, I work with athletes, coaches, educators, and anyone who believes that positive mental health is both achievable and a personal responsibility. This podcast is dedicated to helping listeners develop a positive version of toughness, one rooted in resilience, focus, and growth. Whether you're looking to excel on the field, in the classroom, or in life, this is your space to learn, grow, and take action. Join me on this journey, and together, let's forge your mettle. All right, welcome back, Metalheads. It's Coach Thomann here on the Mental Mettle Podcast. I want to start with a little thank you. I do this often, but I can't do it enough. The growth on the podcast lately has just been fantastic. A lot of people reaching out, commenting on the show, wanting to be on the show, which is always a good sign. And it's just fantastic. I don't spend a lot of time looking at the numbers, but the other day I added them up just between people listening on, whether it's Apple Podcasts or whether it's Spotify, or watching the show on YouTube, or just watching the shorts on YouTube, the clips that you can get. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 100,000 views or downloads. And I know a lot of it isn't like everybody watching the entire show, but just the fact that people are getting the message from this show and have that many downloads. I mean, I'm no Joe Rogan or anything, but it's awesome, and it's fantastic to be able to put out this free resource and really enjoy it. And the other thing I want to mention before we get going, yes, I'm wearing if you're on YouTube paying attention, yes, I'm wearing a bright pink shirt that says "loser" on it. That's a story from the weekend. I got together with my brother, my son, both my brothers. My one brother was in from Europe, a couple nephews, a cousin, and my son. And we got together and played some disc golf, and we had a big, elaborate way that we're playing. And my shout out to my brother Andy for creating this game, because we like to do these games. And I let them know when we started. I said, I haven't played disc golf, and I added it up. Been at least 5 years, might be closer to 10. I'm not sure, somewhere in there. And I said, I'm more than happy. And I don't think my shoulder health is what it used to be from, just getting older and some of the abuse I put my shoulder in. I was like, I don't know if I want to even play. And my brother said, "Oh, you're playing." And I said, "Well, we have partners, and this is not going to go well." And they said, "That's all right. We're fine." And at the beginning, we found out that if you win, you get a disc, this nice new disc golf disc that as I don't play, I really didn't care. But if you lose, you get a shirt that says "loser" on it, and nobody else gets anything. So
I kind of went into it thinking, I might get a shirt out of the deal, and I did. So, but that's okay. We didn't, I don't play disc golf, and that doesn't bother me. But I had a lot of fun. But to be fair, I had a putt, the last putt of the round. If I made it, I'd have gone from seventh up to fourth, so I was right there. So I'll take that for being the oldest guy there. That one doesn't play disc golf. It didn't bother me, and it was a good time. So it was good to see family and catch up with my brother who's in from Europe and hardly ever get to see him. But anyway, just to explain why I'm wearing that shirt and just telling a cool story. But let's get into the episode today. My guest today is another Olympic athlete that I got when I connected with Shane Fisher of American Paragons. If you haven't listened in the last 6 months, well, shame on you. You should go back and check it out. But I've interviewed a lot of Olympic athletes over the last 6 months. Through American Paragons. American Paragons is an organization to promote and help and guide these Olympic athletes of sports that are underfunded, which is I didn't realize is most of them. These people are they tell such phenomenal stories. I learn so much about the mental side of sports from these people that are doing it out of passion. They aren't making big money on it. They all have other jobs. They're doing it for the love of the game and also for the level of competition. They want to do their best. They want to reach these these heights of being the best in the world of things. And to an athlete, they all have a thought on the mental side of sports and work on mentality and visualization and working on their confidence and their voice. They all do it. It's not a question. And it helps me learn so much about that. And it helps me give me some credibility when I'm working with these young athletes that, when I sit down to do a little visualization with them and they're like, I don't know about this. And I'll say, hey, I've talked to this person, this person, this person, this person that they are fighting to be on Olympic teams and try to get gold medals and things. And they do these things. And it's immediately something that the athletes go, okay, maybe this is a real thing. So my guest today, another great example. Her name is Julia Taylor. Julie is a member of the USA women's handball team. I've talked to, this is now the second, I believe, handball team player, which is really cool. It's a cool sport. Julie has been playing, she's been a member of the national team since 2010. So she's been around the block playing nearly 100 international appearances. She's been the team captain for 4 years. She played professional handball in France for a while. And now she's a big leader in the sport. Does a lot to promote it and build the sport. And just a great interview. Now, if you're thinking, I don't know much about handball and I don't care about handball, that's okay, because it's not what the point that's not the point of this conversation. This conversation is about mentality. It's about a little bit about what you do when life punches you in the mouth. Julia lost both her parents as a young child. She rebuilt her life with a new family and a new state, discovered the Olympic sport that she had never played. So she's in college. She finds handball and she's like, ooh, I like it. Gets done with college and just on a whim moves to Europe to chase a dream, and now has spent years balancing this full-time work with elite athletics. And today, as I mentioned, she serves in a leadership role building the future of the sport. And so there's about three things I want to talk about in this interview. It's just one about how adversity shapes us, whether we want it to or not. So you might as well do it the right way. Why purpose is so important to help us endure that adversity. And then a little bit about leadership and how leadership is about leaving things better than you found them. And, Julia works so hard at leadership in a sport that she's been at it for a long time, which means she doesn't have all that much time left, but yet she's working to build it better. So whether you're an athlete, a coach, an educator, someone just navigating a difficult part in your life, I think you're going to take something from Julia's story that you really like and is really going to resonate. So here's my conversation with Team USA handball player Julia Taylor.
A paragon is a model of excellence, a standard by which others are measured, which makes it a perfect word for Olympians who embody dedication, resilience, and the very peak of physical and mental performance. With that in mind, we want to highlight our partners at the American Paragons Foundation. They're a nonprofit supporting Team USA athletes in underfunded women's and adaptive sports by helping them with career opportunities, media exposure, and real-world support beyond competition. Here at the Mental Mettle Podcast, we are proud to be collaborating with them and help amplify the stories and missions of athletes who deserve more visibility. Check out AmericanParagons.org to learn more. There are a ton of ways you can get involved that don't cost a dime. All right, welcome back. It's the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann, here with my guest today from Team USA Women's Handball, Julia Taylor. How you doing, Julia?
Hey, Matt's doing well.
Yeah, so my first thing, and I told you there's a connection. I did a little research on you, and so you got introduced, and correct me where I'm wrong with some of this. You sent me some stuff, and I did some research. You got introduced into handball in college, and then
Correct.
I don't know how you made the decision to go over to Europe to train to learn how to play handball, but I hear that I read that you did that in Aarhus, Denmark. Is that correct?
That's correct. Do we have a connection?
My brother
here?
lives in Aarhus, which is
no way.
Yeah, so he played like 10 years over in the Denmark League in basketball, and played several years at with the Bakken Bears, if you know that team that's there in Aarhus, and probably
Okay.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
as I read that, I'm like, what are the odds of that? Because she's probably going to be like, most people don't even know where Aarhus is, and I've been there, and so my brother and his wife and my niece live in Aarhus, and
That's amazing. It's such a cool time. Yeah, you're right. I had no idea where Aarhus was or even how to say it until I went over there, but it's such a cool little town. That's such a fun connection.
Well, and that's what's interesting. I kind of, my brother would talk about that when his first gig was in Horsens, Denmark, which is right over there, and then he would talk about how he was like, yeah, we got kicked off of practice today because of the handball team. And I'm like, that's not a sentence that you would utter in the United States, right? That's not a thing. But in Denmark, it was like, no, you're a basketball team that falls below the handball. So tell me, how did you, like, give me a little bit of the background, because kids don't grow up playing handball in the US. So, and you said you discovered it in college. Then how do you make a decision to be like, I'm just going to go to Denmark to learn how to play handball?
Yeah, it's a wild journey. It was totally unexpected. I played a lot of sports growing up. For various reasons, did not decide to pursue any after high school. But then got to college and was like, wow, I really missed that, competitive side of life, and I had a friend who was on the team at the University of North Carolina where I went to undergrad. And she was like, you should try it out. You're an athlete. Like, nobody on this team has played handball before. We're taught it. So I went to a tournament, I think maybe a week after I first came out to a couple practices, and was like, oh my God, this sport is amazing. And then I think it must have been the following semester, there were scouts for the junior national team that came to a tournament that was hosted at Carolina, and they just scooped me up essentially. And I was like, wow, there's this whole world that I know nothing about. I had no idea there's a national team. I think I knew that it was an Olympic sport, but didn't know that there was this whole world of potential available to me.
Yeah.
And so that just kind of got the wheels turning, I ended up being selected as an alternate for a junior national team competition. And then they were like, we want to invest in your development essentially. So they hooked me up with this professional training academy in Denmark. And it was just just took me down this whole different path from there. So very unplanned, very unexpected, but I'm very glad I made the leap.
Well, and just a little bit of I don't know. It's somewhere between faith and just like
oblivion. Just be like, okay, I guess I'll just go and do this. And I'm not giving you a hard time, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Mhm.
there has to be on some level, people are like, what are you even doing? Why? Like, what's, why?
Yes. Fully. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I talk to, like, if I run into old friends, they're like, I still don't really have any idea what you're doing with your life or what's going
Right.
on. And I think it helped that, like, I discovered it at what, 19, 20 years old. You don't care about anything at that age.
No.
You're fully open to the world and like taking these risks and exploring. So I think that helped too.
Yeah. So from Denmark, you decided to. I mean, I'm assuming that. You played pro handball in Europe as well, and I
Yes.
think you several years in France. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I did this stint in Denmark, came back actually to the US to finish out my undergrad. And at that time, the national team was establishing a residency program for both men and women. It was in partnership with Auburn University at the time. So moved down after I graduated to Auburn and was training for maybe a year and a half there with the national team, and was like, I feel like I've progressed and not sort of like hit my ceiling of growth in the US. And also knew that, this is a predominantly European sport,
Yes.
and I might be thriving in the US, but like I want to see how I stack up against real handball players, who've been playing their whole lives. So our coach at the time was French Canadian. He had coached and lived for many years in France. So he sort of just sent me off, and I did a bunch of tryouts all over France and ended up signing with a club outside of Paris. And ended up, I was thinking, I'll just go for a season, see how it goes, and ended up doing 7 years there.
Yeah. So you stayed there in with that club there in 7 years for 7 years.
I stayed with them for maybe 4 or 5 years, switched to another club in another like district outside of Paris. COVID hit, so took some time
Right.
off, and then went back to it for a final season before coming back stateside.
No, that's cool. That's another. With my family, we lived in Grenoble for a year, which
Oh,
is
nice.
yeah, which is another. So it's just a phenomenal. Um, yeah, that was had to be fun living there for that time, being young and doing stuff, because it's just
It was,
it's a
and
great
actually,
place.
where my coach lived was in Grenoble.
Yeah,
I think where he ended up like
yeah,
living
great
in.
place. I mean, just did a lot of hiking, and I'm not much of a skier, but I liked it during the summer when I could. Yeah, you could get out and do things. So what's the talk to me a little bit about what, like, you have talk to me about your leadership role with women's handball and USA handball, because I'm really interested in that part of it.
Yeah. So I think it was around maybe 2020. Actually, it might have been during the big wave, first wave of COVID. USA Team Handball put together an athletes advisory council, which is essentially, I think most Olympic and Paralympic sports have one, but it's basically just a group of dedicated athletes who are elected by their peers, and they advocate for the interest of the athletes. They represent them to the board and to the national governing body. It's really just like their voice in the sport. So that was kind of where I like first got my taste of advocacy and athlete representation. I was elected to be the representative for the women's national team, and then was elected within the AAC to be the co-chair. So I did 4 or 5 years on that, and then had the opportunity to run for board seats with USA Team Handball. And I hesitated a lot. Handball is a sport that it's very, very little resources, a lot of organizational and structural difficulties, we'll say. So the idea of like being on the board of this not very effective organization was a little bit, it was exhausting even just to think about.
Well, yeah, I
But
mean, the thought about recruiting somebody come in and be like, by the way, we don't have any resources.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not all that well run because of different logistical reasons and not a lot of support, but you should really come do it. Yeah.
yeah, it's a great selling point. You pay for everything out of pocket, and you don't make a cent back, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's how does that, and I've started to talk to, Shane Fisher with American Paragons a little bit, and just I think an Americans, what's the word I want to use? It's just ignorance over the lack of support with a lot of the sports, the Olympic sports. How does that compare from what you know and from what you notice with other countries?
I mean, I think France is a great example because it's so well resourced. I think the US might be the only country where the national teams are not subsidized by the government. In France, they have like developmental centers for kids, essentially, starting as early as middle school, where it's funded by the state. Great athletes are recruited and can start training as early as, I don't know, 12, 13 years old, fully covered by the states. National team players get stipends. I mean, I had a lot of teammates that played for, like the Congo and Senegal and Morocco, and they would, every time they went to a national team training camp, they came back with a couple thousand in their pockets. Just recognize it, which I think is very, as it should be. Recognizing that this is a job and they should be compensated for it. So I think, I think that the US, people are always surprised to know that not only do we have to fundraise to be able to even go to competitions, but that we're not paid for all of the training and all of the work that we put into outside of, we have to have full-time jobs to be able to just make ends meet and also train full-time for this sport. It's definitely a different experience from what I lived in France.
How do you guys go about? It's so crazy to think about that. I mean, you're doing a sport, playing for Team USA, and you're on this, and you also have to be thinking about, in addition to your job and playing the sport, like, oh, we have to do this fundraising. Like, how do you guys even, like, and I'm assuming as part of the committee, like, that's part of your, like that's part of your job. Like, you're trying to figure this out. How do you guys even go about? I mean, you're not walking around selling like frozen pizzas to people like you're in middle school or something, but like, how do you guys go around getting funding?
It's close enough. I mean, I do remember at one like US domestic tournament, we were literally selling our gear to be able to fund a championship in Cuba, So I mean, it's a lot of like just trying to go through organic connections, a lot of personal donations from folks. We have a GoFundMe link. We do like crowdfunding. We have in the past been able to secure some like, sponsorships from companies and brands and things like that. But it has primarily been through like our own networks. That's the biggest like lever we've had. And then on the board side, as a board member, that's one of the board's primary roles, is to fundraise for the national teams and for the organization. And there's a whole, list of reasons why that's difficult, competing with other very well-known American sports. And if you have to go to a room and explain what handball is before you even get to the pitch, that's
It's hard. So when we talk about mental toughness and like the day-to-day and things like that, compare the two, like the mental toughness of playing the game and the mental toughness of that grind of having to support yourself. Like, are they similar, different? You find one more difficult than the other? Are they compared?
Yeah. I think the day-to-day grind of not being funded and having to essentially work 2 full-time jobs is actually harder than the grind of being an athlete because, you see the reward much faster on the court. If I push through, if I keep going, if I keep working, I see like the direct, correlation with my performance on the court. Versus like, it's just, it truly is a grind with the day-to-day because you're literally just making it. I mean, I can't count the number of family events or weddings or social events that I've had to miss because I don't have the time or the energy or the funds to be able to do any of that other stuff, and I think about, I wake up, I get a workout in, I work a 9 to 5, and then I got to go back to the gym after that. It's exhausting physically, mentally, emotionally. Like there's just, you really are just plowing through and okay, just got to keep reminding myself, what is the end goal? Why am I doing that? And there have been many times where I like lie in bed and I'm like, why am I doing this? But I think that just having to keep that end goal in mind, remind myself, okay, why am I doing that? Has really been like the driving force between making it through the day to day.
Well, it's interesting because I think one of the big complaints that a lot of people have with different athletes and let's say some of the big sports in both, not just pro, but now with college, is that people complain about a sense of entitlement, because, they're playing a sport, they're young, they're making so much money. And my guess is you don't have to worry about that sense of entitlement whenever you're, I mean, no. And I say that in almost in a positive way. Like when you step on the court to play, you're like, there's no question I earned
I earned my spot and I earned my ability to be here. There's no like, yeah, nobody earned. Yeah, you know what I mean. You get what where I'm coming from. It can be a positive thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely humbling more so than a sense of entitlement. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. So what's the when we talk about that mental toughness and you put some things, talk to me a little bit about. I'm always interested in. I love talking mental toughness. I love talking about where people get resilience and things like that because I think that it's not a there is probably a genetic factor just like there is in anything, but I think it's always developed somewhere, somehow, whether it's environmental or whether it's intentional.
Mm.
And you talked about some of your story young and just a little bit of what you want to share on like how that's developed your mental toughness and kind of like your ability to have this grind to keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I did share a little bit about it. I lost both of my parents when I was very young. Lost my father to he was older, much older than my mother, and he had a stroke and then got pneumonia when he was in the hospital and passed.
Mm.
And my mother had breast cancer and passed from that. So I had two older brothers, and the three of us for a time there was a little bit of just like family members just coming in and staying with us and just making sure that we were surviving as we finished out the school year. And then one of my mother's brothers, so my uncle, stepped up and was like, we'll take the kids, we'll adopt them. It ended up just being me and one of my brothers, my oldest brother, kind of a long story with that, but he was not adopted by my aunt and uncle. But we were moved from Boston down to North Carolina. Very different region, very different
Yeah.
family dynamics as well. My biological parents, my dad was a doctor, my mom was a lawyer, not any kind of like faith or religion or anything. Whereas my aunt and uncle were very conservative Christians. We're living in the Bible Belt of the US, a lot of different they had three kids of their own. So it was really tough. I was 7 years old when I was adopted by them. My brother that came with me was 10. And it was a lot. Like we're dealing with the loss of our parents, obviously, but also like our whole world being ripped away, like our friends, our school, our support systems, everything that we knew. And trying to figure out how to deal with the pain of losing all that, the grief of that, but also like trying to survive in this totally new system where all of a sudden we're going to church 3 times a week. And, it's just there's very clear, visible gender norms and things that I lived as a girl and then a young woman in the South, in the Bible Belt, that like my brother never had any idea of. And I think I say this now, this is my perspective. And as I get older, I like learn things, but it felt to me like he adapted much more quickly into that space and like very quickly, like was bought very much into, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but bought very much into like the religion aspect. And whereas I always felt like a little bit isolated and didn't know how to deal with all these feelings and never really felt like I belonged. And just a lot of issues with my adoptive parents. And really only now as an adult being able to like enjoy my time being around them, and I think through all of that, just it was not fun to go through and to live, but it did like teach me that like, wow, like I have a source of inner strength that I like maybe never would have discovered if all this hadn't happened, and that I'm a big advocate for creating your social system, finding your support system, rather finding your community, but that also that like I can survive without one, I can be my own support system and I can pick myself up and, kind of push my way through and make it out and it's okay, and I think that the biggest thing, there's so many things that I learned from that, but the biggest being that like I went through like a really shitty time and came out on the other side okay, and so it's sort of this piece now where it's like anything life would throw my way at me, like I know that ultimately I will be okay. I will make it out on the other side and be stronger for it.
It's I mean that's the thing, and it's great hearing those stories. And part of the reason we love those stories is because not everybody comes out on the other side okay.
Yeah.
And that's
Yes.
and I wish I could figure out exactly what causes that, what triggers that. I mean, there's a little bit that we know, but it's just but I do know, the one thing I do know, Julia, is the when people go through that, they survive it, they go the other side. That's like, not only are they tougher and more resilient, but they're able to look back and go, yeah, this was bad, but this actually helped me.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, maybe that's the thing that a lot of people need to realize. And I try to teach the athletes and stuff like this. Like, you're going through something that's really hard right now. Just like keep grinding, because that's what makes you better. And I don't think everybody gets that.
Yeah.
Your athlete probably spends hours working on the specific skill set they need for their sport. And they probably spend hours in the weight room building their body. But how much time do they spend intentionally training their mind? Well, building mindset is the key to bridging the gap between the skills that we see and game execution. Well, Mental Mettle Coaching provides individual programs that can help your athlete develop this third and crucial skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about, I loved what you said when you talked about, you now know the importance of that social community and how important that is. And I'm curious how you take what you know from that, and then in a leadership role in Team USA Handball, how do you facilitate that? How do you make sure that that's something that happens?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's partially because it's something that I felt I lacked or didn't have growing up. But I do recognize just how important it is to have like a community around you and a support system around you. And that's also part of the reason I laugh, because I have friends who do individual sports with Team USA. And I'm like, I don't know how you could ever find that motivation to push through. Because a lot of times if I'm doing a hard conditioning session or a hard workout, like I'm doing it for my teammates. Like I'm doing it, yes, for myself to be the best I can be on the court, but like, I don't want to let my teammates down, you know? And I think that's very much translated into why I ultimately decided to run for the seat on the board, despite all the organizational difficulties, and how I let it, you know, kind of guide my leadership style is I'm doing this for my teammates, you know? I'm of course if the whole, you know, what is it? What's the expression? A rising tide raises all, something like that.
Yes, exactly.
But I, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, like the changes that I'm advocating for, maybe I won't get to see the benefits of, you know, I'm at the end of my career, but if I can make it better for the next generation and leave the handball community in a better state than when I came into it, then that's good enough for me.
Yeah. So that's a great question. Tell me about the state of USA Handball, and maybe even more specifically USA Women's Handball. Is there much of a difference in like in the two organizations and where they're at in their growth?
I think that there is a difference between USA Team Handball and then the women's program and women's handball. I think generally, previously, I'll say there was a lot more spotlight on the men's program, and this is not, you know, like current leadership excluded from this, but there were more opportunities given to the men, to the men's national team. I don't know that there were any like resources directly funneled to them that we didn't have because legally they're not supposed to, you know, but there's definitely more spotlight, definitely more, you know, like opportunities opened up to them. I think generally like people were more excited about seeing the men compete than we were, you know, and then there's been just this incredible shift and just excitement around women's sports in general that has benefited us for sure. You know, I think we had a few open tryouts that went viral on social media, and that just brought this whole wave of awareness to both the sport and to the women's team. And it just kind of exploded handball on the women's side in the club system in the US, which has been really exciting. But yeah, I mean, the women have always struggled to get like that respect and the same opportunities that the men have, and to be able to grow and build in the same way, you know?
Yeah. And again, it speaks to that idea you're talking about. Just it's a grind, and it's like you have to put a lot of work in to be able to play your sport. And I think that begs the question. It's a deeper question than just say, why do it? But it's obviously that you understand, or I can assume that you believe in the importance of athletics, not just for somebody your age, but even younger. Like, because I think it goes to that conversation we had about making people tougher and making people better by going through these things. Why
because Team USA women's handball, it's far from a glamorous sport. And you got to fundraise to do it. You got to do these things. What in your opinion, then, I mean, what's the point? Why do athletics, right? I have an answer that I will tell people all day long, but I'm kind of curious from your perspective.
Yeah. I think maybe the answer for women, without like making like a huge, generalization, it might be different for men. I think, again, like this goes back to growing up in the South where there are these very strict gender roles and gender norms, but like sports athletics for me just showed that not only is it okay to be physically strong and like mentally strong, but that you can, it's empowering, for a woman, and especially a woman who grows up in a place where you're told like to be quiet and submissive and seen and not heard, to like have this space where like, no, we want to see you, we want to hear you, you need to go out and you need to, especially handball, it's a contact sport, like F somebody up on the court. It's definitely empowering that like, no, women should be strong. You can be strong and you should be strong. So I think that's in and of it, that if it's just that, I think it's worth it, even if it's not.
But that's enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So somebody like, I've watched a few handball games. Give me the pitch. Like why handball? Why should I watch it? Why should, if when you're selling this to an athlete, because you have to like, there's plenty of athletes in the United States. It's selling handball to the athlete, right? Not the other way around. What's the pitch? Why the sport? What's great about handball?
Yeah. What I usually tell people is that it is the best parts of every American sport combined into one. It is super fast paced. It's high contact, high scoring, fast game time. It's exciting. There's a lot going on. It's relatively easy to pick up. Even if you don't know all the rules, it's relatively easy to follow. And there's some elements of like spectacle in it too,
What do you mean?
We like to say that's like a tagline of the most American sport Americans have never heard of.
Well, that's when you say spectacle, what do you mean?
You might see like our equivalent of an alley-oop, like we've done this with my teammates where it's like one player goes up, acts like they're going to shoot, tosses the pass, and the other one catches in the air and throws it into the goal, There's like spectacular fast, but like a steal that you go down the court and then you like finish with this incredible goal on a fast break, There's like all this, it's just, you see just all these different aspects of American athleticism combined into one. Yeah.
No, it's cool. It's between you and talking with your teammate Katie, like it's making me want to watch it and pay attention to it. And it's interesting. Yeah. So talk to me, because you guys got, it's exciting coming up because you got the USA, you got the Olympics coming up to LA in 28.
Yes.
Tell me about that. What's coming up for that and just what you're excited about.
Yeah. So we get an automatic spot in the LA 2020 Olympics because we're the host nation. We haven't qualified to the Olympics since the 90s. People don't know this. They're always surprised to learn this, but there are only 12 slots in the Olympics for handball, and there's only one for all of North and South America. So it's always a battle for that one spot. Brazil has historically, last few decades, been the ones to earn that.
Wait a minute. So why is there only one spot for all of North? Because they know that Europe is better at it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's nuts.
I mean, come on.
I know.
Rough. That's rough.
It's really rough. Yeah. There are, I don't know how many spots allocated to Europe. Maybe one or two to Asia. I think maybe one to Africa. Like, yeah, it's a dogfight to get those. If you're not in Europe, it's a dogfight to get that one slot. So, yeah. So it's super exciting then that we get an automatic bid, because we don't have to worry about that whole process to lead up to it. But before 2020 Olympics, we have a ton of competitions. We will have World Championships next year, Pan American Games next year as well. And then this year, we actually have two different official competitions. We will have a 2-game series against Canada in September. That's our qualifier to the Pan American Games. And then we will play in a Continental Championship in December, which is our qualifier to the World. So there's all these competitions, but there's also all these like qualification pathways to get there. So it's a ton of different steps to get to that final end goal of the Olympics. And I would say like of course, we're focusing that long term on LA 2028, but there's so many like shorter term goals that we need to hit before we get there. So September is the first of those.
Well, it just dawned on me in your situation, and that situation has to be the case for a lot of athletes. There are a lot of athletes out there that are on Team USA, whatever sport, they're on Team USA for an Olympic sport, but have never played in the Olympics and may never get to, right? Which is your case at this point. Like you're on Team USA handball for how long have you been on it?
16 years.
16 years.
Glorious.
And now you're 16 and you got a couple more to go and you'll finally get to play in Olympics. That has to be that's exciting.
It is.
Beyond exciting.
Cool. Yeah, it's super exciting. I actually retired in 2023 when we got knocked out in the qualification process for the Paris Olympics. And I was 33 and ultimately just exhausted from the grind of it all, 13 years of that, so I took a step back. And then last year, that Olympic bug hit me. I was thinking about I've been on Team USA since 2010. Wouldn't it be incredible to try for a slot in 2028, And so I came back for it at 36 years old. So
yeah, what was that like having to come back after how long were you? Yeah, listen, I feel you. Did you shut down training a little bit and kind of rest a little bit?
Yeah, that first year, 2024, I didn't do anything. I was lifting a couple times a week,
yeah, no, but it's easy to get out of that kind of rhythm.
Yeah. And then last year I thought to myself, everybody's doing marathons. Maybe this will be my next new thing.
Yeah.
Got injured doing marathon training. And so I was I'm not going to do a marathon. And then I as I was thinking about whether or not to come back, I was I need to see because I might not get selected to the Olympic team,
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to go through 2.5 years, I need to make sure that I enjoy the process of it, So I went to a tournament in Chicago last fall just to see if I still even enjoyed playing, and I had a blast and was ooh, I still got it. I'm still running on these kids. And then I tore my calf and was wow, this
Mm-hmm.
is what 2 years away from the sport will do. And also I'm not 25 anymore, So this year has really been rebuilding and getting back in shape and getting my body used to a lot of volume and impact. And also now learning at 36 years old, how to take care of myself better and how to, I'm at a different phase physically than I was when I was playing last. And there's maybe not a huge physical jump between 33 to 36, but dealing with age and coming off of a huge, I'm calling it a sabbatical now. Yeah. And
yeah,
making sure that my body can handle 2 more years of that to be able to
when you get a little bit older, that it's a diminishing returns type thing. I need to train, I got to be in shape, but like you said, marathon training, something like that, you can overuse, you can do too much.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in what sort of physical training does a lifting training, what does physical training look like for a handball athlete?
Yeah. Handball is brutal in terms of cardio and anaerobic endurance. Your games are 60 minutes of game time, but it ends up being probably an hour and a half total of match time. And you're sprinting for almost the entirety of that, It's a lot more, maybe similar to hockey in that it's just that constant back and forth across the court. It's faster than basketball. Different from soccer too, in that you're sprinting a lot of it, and it's not, soccer does a lot of distance, but maybe not as much high bursts of energy. Anyway, so a good portion of physical training is just conditioning, and I think even more so for us as the USA team, because we have a lot of spectacular athletes that we've recruited, but who have never played handball. And so we know that we probably won't beat a lot of these powerhouse teams off of skill, but if we can beat them off of athleticism and fitness, then, that's the lever we have to push, So I think for myself, coming off of this sabbatical, it's been a lot of getting that explosivity back and getting my speed back up and my jump back up. And a lot of this is just kind of like things that have maybe stagnated over the years. So
Yeah,
conditioning and explosivity. Yeah.
it sounds exhausting, and you're trying
It's,
to, work a job and do all that. So it's a lot. Um,
it's,
so then let's talk about, I talked about the physical training, and this could be something that you might speak to for the team, for a handball athlete, or for yourself. What sort of intentional mental training do you do to prepare yourself to be high level handball player?
yeah, it's a great question. We, in previous years, we did like as a team, we would do a lot of like mental work together, visualization work. In my own practice, I got into meditation. I had to find the balance between like being hyper focused and also like kind of just letting go. And I think that what I've learned now as my style is that like I will do my most of my mental work completely outside of competitions. I will watch game film, I journal a lot, I meditate. But when I get into a competition pregame, I don't do any kind of like visualization or pregame routine, because then I end up just getting more into my head. I think
Mm-hmm.
what helps me the most is finding a way for me to just, okay, let my body do its thing. And that's been, years of work of trying to get to that place where like I can just turn that on.
I think that really speaks to what I try to do when I do the. People always ask me, well, what are you trying to get them to do? And I'm like, well, it's the mental coaching I do. It's not everybody. It's not everybody's the same. Like, as people's activation energy is different. Some people want to go in hyped up and focus, and some people want to go in and calm and focus. Some people want to go in and almost not care, right? Like, some people play and but understanding yourself a little bit, just like an athlete's going to have different physical abilities and limitations. People are going to have mental limitations and abilities that they need, but you need to understand that.
Yeah.
And you only find that by actually, like you say, doing the visualization, doing the meditation. I'm amazed that I'm taking a lot of these interviews with Olympic athletes, and I guess I shouldn't be amazed. I've yet to have one say that they say, I don't really do any mental training. Like, it's a given, right? It's something they're like, oh, which I think that is the message. If I want to do anything else, that's the message I want to put out there to younger athletes, that no, this is a thing that you should be doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where did it, like, when did you start some of those things, or who like introduced you to it, or where did the idea come from? Because I
Yeah.
don't think it's a given. Like I said, younger when we're doing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I fully agree. I think I don't know if this is the case for all athletes, but it definitely, I learned the importance of it when I like had a need for it, like
That's the case on
as I,
about everything, right? Yeah.
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 Um, when I decided to go and play in Europe, I again was a young, dumb, early 20s something that thought I was hot shit, and then got a real humbling when I went to Europe and was playing alongside these athletes who've been playing handball for as long as I could walk and talk, and my first season, I think I maybe dressed for a third of the games, and then I was sitting on the bench for most of it, and like was just getting a couple minutes here and there. And so then it got to the point where it was just this like vicious cycle of I'm not getting any game time or even game dress. And so then when I get on the court, I'm like stressed about it, and
Yeah.
like feel this pressure to perform. And it just got worse and worse and worse until I was like, I can't, like, if I want to succeed, I got to figure this out. And so I think that's when I started to really get into the meditation piece. And I loved what you were saying before we started recording about the positive psychology piece. And I did a course on positive meditation,
Mm-hmm.
or the power of positive thinking, and just kind of integrating some of those practices into my own practice. And the like light bulb moment for me was that like I can control a
That's it.
lot more than I realized. Yeah. Like even my like physical reactions to stress and all of the like bodily weight, your hormones and the sweaty palms and the whatever, like I can control that, and I can learn techniques to like calm the symptoms of stress, or like harness it to be positive. So that was huge for me to just really like that light bulb moment of like, I have a choice. Like, this is something that I can actually, control and impact. And it's not something that happens to me.
And once I noticed that the athletes that I work with, once I can get them to have that realization that I can control my reactions to things and some of these physiological responses that are going on in my body, and I can control them. Once they start to recognize that, and that can take a little bit, but once they recognize that, they go, the excitement for doing these mental preparation exercises is just like you just suddenly go, oh, I realize I can control this. I'm going to learn how to control this. It's like learning any other skill. And it's like,
Mm.
if I can figure out how to do this, it's going to make me better. Well, then I'm going to do this. But this is even better because it goes beyond the sport. That's why I like sports so much, because it gives us an avenue to learn these mental tools that we will use, well beyond the sport. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, you play handball, but you also have a job, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Tell me about the crossover and the mentality from one to the other, and also being on that committee, because that's what I think is really important.
Yeah. I remember, so I work for a nonprofit consulting firm. And I remember first couple months that I was there, I had to do a presentation in front of like a pretty large client group. And I was so stressed.
Mm-hmm.
I still didn't know like what we do as a company, as an organization.
Yeah.
And then for me to present in front of these people, my company is really big on like, just, throw you into the deep end and you'll learn how to swim. And I was all those physiological symptoms that we were talking about, just heart racing and just feeling out of breath and everything. And I took a moment before I logged onto my Zoom meeting and just went through those same exercises that I used for any kind of, handball stressors that I might be feeling, and just felt myself just, okay, this is familiar,
Yeah.
This is unfamiliar, but I can make it familiar. So that was big. And I think I forgot the second part of your question.
No, I think that was what I was asking is that there is a crossover, and it's like when you learn how to deal with adversity in one area, it translates so well to another area.
Totally. Yeah.
And
yeah. I think too, you asked about the board too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Again, having been socialized in this very women should be seen and not heard, handball really gave me that confidence to be able to speak up, to push back against people and to speak up, and that it's okay, it's being able to go toe to toe with our CEO, for example, and something that I don't agree with on a public facing call, or being the only person to vote no on something that I didn't feel like benefited the athletes, even though all the other board members are unanimously yesing, I think the confidence to be able to stand alone and to stand firm in my beliefs definitely, I think, has come from handball as well. And just, again, that feeling empowered and feeling strong. And despite being a woman, I will say,
right.
And despite being told my whole life to you need to be pleasant, and you don't need to push back. I think that's been huge too.
It's great. Again, it translates, and that's what I'm trying to, I got into the professional coaching, and I decided I want to work with athletes. But I told somebody the other day, if I had grown up playing, the flute or whatever, and was really into music, I would be working with musicians, but I would have the same goal, in that they were using what you love and what you compete at as preparation for life and preparation for other areas, which, I hate to say it, are more important, right? It's because at some point you've done a really good job of remaining an athlete, but that's it's coming. There's going to be life after athletics for everybody, and that's so. I think we need to learn the lessons in athletics mentally to be able to be prepared for our lives after, and the problem is, Julia, we don't see every kid. They quit, they don't handle it right, their parents don't handle it right, and they miss the opportunity to learn those lessons, and then they aren't prepared. And that's the travesty to me, is you're missing the opportunity to do that. I don't care if you win. I care if you handle it.
Yeah. I agree. I think especially for young girls too. Like they
Agreed.
end up in sport so much earlier than young boys. And it's a travesty, the opportunities they would have to learn those skills and learn how to push through challenges and be resilient. And not that they can't learn them elsewhere, but as you said, like sport is a very unique vector for learning those skills.
It is. And if it's what you care about, then that's what you use. So, yeah, so we're running short here on time, Julia. So the last question I always ask everybody is, what is the question that I should have asked you that I didn't? What did I miss? What is the topic we did not cover that you're like, oh, we should have talked about that?
I feel like I kind of wove in what I wanted to talk about a little bit without you. I think like talking about the unique aspects or challenges that women face, female handballers face. We did talk about it a little bit, but it is, just besides like being handball players, that women's sports in general just doesn't get the same kind of spotlight and resourcing and whatnot. And then dealing with like sexism in maybe not necessarily our organization, but the broader organization and things like that. It takes a different type of mental toughness that men don't typically have to face.
Yeah. And they're under a different lens. It's a different microscope. Like, as you were talking about, like some of the things that you might stand up and in a board meeting and say that it is how it is. It is perceived differently coming from you than it would be if it coming from a guy. And you know what I mean? Like it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. But learning how to deal with it is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I love what you're doing. I love your passion. I love what you're trying to do to build the sport, and keep at it. I'm going to keep paying attention. I followed all the handball pages on my Instagram, so I'm keeping tabs on you guys, and I'm a fan, so I'll be paying attention. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Julia.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so great, and great to chat about all this. I really appreciate all you're doing too to help promote, the importance of mental toughness for athletes and individuals alike. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Parents, is your athlete ready for the upcoming sports season? They might have the strength, the speed, and the skills, but without confidence, they can still struggle when the game is online. Skill and strength are great. They're necessary, but they're not used to their full potential without the right mentality. Confidence is key. It's the key to unlocking that full potential. And at Mental Mettle Coaching, I offer personalized sessions designed to build the confidence your athlete needs for a successful season. My proven techniques empower them to perform under pressure, both on the field and in life. Don't let a lack of confidence hold them back. Book a free session today and discover the power of confidence. Visit the website, get started on the journey to a more confident, successful athlete with Mental Mettle Coaching.
All right, so another great interview with a member of the American Paragons and Olympic athlete. And again, there's a few. I love listening to the interviews and taking things away and then applying them to our own life. And I've got a few here. Takeaway number one is that adversity reveals what you're made of. It's not always a good thing, but it does. I talk a lot about when I go to schools, and I talk about my idea of 100% metal and how it's about, recognizing what you're good at, what you're not good at in the face of adversity. And then repeating positive actions and habits to see growth in the face of adversity. Like, nothing happens, no growth, no recognition, nothing matters if there's not adversity. That's whenever it's like that's what tests us, and that's what shows us. It gives us the answers on a test, right? It's like that's where we are. And so adversity is a huge part. And so we all admire resilient people, but it's that resilience that it's not built. it can't be built in comfort. It has to be in a place of adversity. And Julia reminds us this story that, it's this hardship that we don't want to see happen to something else. Like it's a hardship that is, we don't want these things to happen, yet this is how we become who we are. It's this weird thing. And I feel that in my life, like the things that have happened to me, I don't want that to have happened, but man, I'm glad that they happened now. And so Julia's story is, she, loses both parents, uprooted, had to start over, help her learn that she could learn to survive difficult things. And it's the lesson isn't that bad things are good, but that bad things can produce good things if we choose to grow through them. My line is that I always say that, how do you take something that happened to you and turn it into something that happened for you? And you can't change what happened, but you can sure take that and build from it. So make sure that you apply that to your own a little bit. So what challenges are you seeing right now that aren't your fault? They're just life's adversity, because this mandatory adversity, this just happens. It's part of life. Well, how's it changing you? How's it making you better? How can you make it so that this very tough season you're going through actually makes you better? And I know that's really hard to do, but I don't think we have any other choice if we want to get better. And then also, once you get better at that one thing, you get better at something else. And if I can do this, then I can do that. And then you start to choose doing hard things. And the more you do these hard things, then the more these hard things that life throws at you become easier. So when we talk about doing these hard things, we're talking about the grind. And what makes, and Julia talks about the grind and how hard it was. And it's not just a physical grind, but it's a mental grind. And she talked about how what makes the grind worth it is purpose. And because Julia was talking about, like, again, the handball isn't the hard part. It's everything around the handball. It's working while you're doing it. It's the training, the fundraising. It's missing weddings, missing family, doing it over and over and over again. And knowing that the reward wasn't going to be immediate. And even Julia would tell you, and I've talked to some other handball players in the U.S., they're really looking forward to, they get to play in the Olympics in LA in 28. And barring a miracle of all miracles, sports wise, they're not going to get a medal. USA handball is not on the level yet. We're just not there. So they're doing all this work knowing that they're just trying to compete. So it changes your perspective a little bit. You can't have this. A lot of times athletes put in this grind thinking, that I'm going to get maybe a championship out of it. Well, this isn't going to happen. So what's the purpose of the grind? Well, she ties it to the fact that her purpose is something else. And her purpose is, ultimately she talks about how purpose is building the sport. And when we talk about that, she's talking about a leadership, building a sport that is on its way up in the U.S. Keep in mind, as I mentioned, Julie is not going to be on the team all that much longer. And that kind of goes into, so her purpose is kind of like, it's for herself a little bit and challenging herself and getting better and putting in that adversity, but it's also about helping others and making the team better. And which means she's in this perfect place to be a leader. And her leadership is somewhat of her purpose. And that leadership to her is, and I think a great example of leadership is making things better than you found them. I just loved this part because Julia is making so many changes and really fighting for Team USA handball, knowing that it's not going to quote unquote benefit her. And I think that there's an idea that really good coaches that I know understand this, that these coaches come into sports teams and like at a high school, like a basketball team or a football team, and it might take them 10 years to get over this hump and make the playoffs and get to a state finals or something like that. And it's this long process. It's almost always this long process. And these really good coaches can look back and say that, these guys that get the state championship, they are hoisted up and they are held up, but they stand on the shoulders of kids that started to change the culture, change the idea 6-7 years ago. And some of these kids that did so much for the team and probably did it in a way that they may not have even had a winning season, but they changed the culture, made things better, and started to turn the tide for these schools, these teams, and then these teams get better. It happens all the time, and good coaches understand this. And that's kind of what I feel about when I talk to Julia, is that she's planting trees she'll never get to sit under. That's leadership. And it's not about winning the title. It's not about, being the top dog. It's about, how can I make this better for the next person? How can I do my best to change this culture? And that application goes just to all of us. That is such a grand purpose, is to say, well, what am I doing that's going to benefit others? Because that we're going to run out of time today, but we don't have to, the idea of doing things to others is such it's a selfless thing, but also from a psychological psychological perspective, is so helpful for us to be thinking about, how can I help others? How can I work with others? How about the people coming up behind me? We think less about ourselves, and that really helps us do just mentally and our purpose and our grind. And I just think it's such a great story of Julia's, and I love that. So just remember that this adversity that you're going through, it's what helps us understand what we're capable of. And then making sure you have that purpose, that a reason why we do what we do, why you're playing it, that is beyond outcomes. And then that idea that leadership is taking what we've learned and then helping it for who's next, and just making somebody else's journey easier or even grander, hopefully, because they want to do the same thing. And that's what, man, just great examples of what mental mettle looks like. And that's why I love talking to these American paragons like Julia Taylor. So if you didn't get a chance, go back and look at some of the other ones. They're fantastic. But for now, we are out of time. I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann. This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, and always remember to forge your metal. Thanks for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast. Don't forget to tune in every week for more insights and strategies to help you forge mental toughness and resilience. This podcast is brought to you by Mental Mettle Coaching, where we are driven by a passion for sharing knowledge and experience that empowers others to play, live, and grow with confidence. Our mission is to instill a resilient and spirited mindset in our clients, enabling them to confidently face adversity and actively seek new challenges for personal growth. At Mental Mettle Coaching, we offer individual coaching, group coaching, and professional development for schools and businesses. Whether you're an athlete, educator, or professional, we're here to help you unlock your potential and thrive in every area of life. Until next time, keep growing, stay resilient, and always remember to forge your metal.